Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Bachmann's new Gunpowder vans came out recently, and I was able to get my hands on one of the classic Fusit Gunpowder versions, and it arrived in the mail today, so I'm gonna take a quick look at it and review it. Let's get started. Alright, so here's the model up close, and you can see that it is absolutely packed with molded on detail. There are a ton of rivets and then strapping, and then also the doors and brake handle. And I'd say that it just, like, everything is really crisply molded and it looks pretty good overall. And I do apologize, it is a little hard to see because the everything is the same color, but it is all there and it does look really good when the light catches on it. Alright, so here's a look at the lettering on the model, and it looks pretty good. All of the letters are like very crisply like applied, and I like that they're able to get it to look like handwriting. It kind of reminds me of the scruffy model in N-Gage, and I will say that the lettering does look pretty close to how it does in the show. It is a little bit bolder here, but that's understandable since this is a much smaller model. And the only thing is, when the colors go around the rivets, there are a few spots where the black kind of shows through, but I mean, that's a small issue. And I imagine it is probably kind of difficult to get the printing around the rivets in the first place, but I just figured I'd point it out since it is there. But overall, I think the lettering does look really good. Alright, here's a look at the end with the doors, and you can see that it's all of the detail on it is molded very nicely. Again, like, you can see the lock mechanism between the doors there, and it looks pretty good. And even the hinges, like, you can see them on the left side pretty well. They are very nicely molded, and they look like they could move even though they don't, which, given their tiny size, is kind of impressive. Here you can see the brake handle up close, and it appears to be the same design as on the Blue Mountain Quarry wagons, and you can see that there's even a little chain kind of hanging down. It's not like a real chain, it's molded on like everything else, but it does look pretty good. And then underneath the wagon you can also see the brake shoes that are molded on the chassis, which is kind of cool. Alright, here's a quick look at the top of the wagon, and again you can just see that there's a lot of rivet detailing, and then underneath you can see that the wagon doesn't really have a lot of detail. It just has like the Bachmann logo and the year and the licensing information. But you can see that the chassis appears to be the same as is on the high side wagons or the Blue Mountain Quarry wagons. And however, the wheels are actually metal. They are like very blackened, but you can kind of scrape that away, and then you can see on the top right wheel that underneath that is actually a metal wheel, which is nice to see considering the wagon is kind of light. The Gunpowder wagon also has the standard NEM couplings that we've come to expect from the narrow gauge range. Here's a quick look at the Gunpowder van with other pieces of rolling stock from the range. I'd say that it scales pretty well with everything, and in particular, I like that the Gunpowder van and the brake van kind of scale similar to how we would expect them to in the show. And yeah, I'd say that it looks pretty good with everything overall. Alright, now that the wagon's on the track, you can see that it is pretty free rolling, which is nice. I did mention that the wagon is pretty light since it's all made of plastic, and that does seem to affect how the couplings work a little bit, since if you try and just run an engine into the wagon, it doesn't really want to couple up and it just gets pushed along. But I do think part of the issue is just with the coupling design in general. Um, as for points, the wagon is pretty good at being pushed over the points without derailing, which is nice. Since I was a little worried about that since it is a little bit light, but it doesn't really seem to have issues with any of the points on my layout. And even when it is pushed in the middle of a longer train, it's able to make it over the points without really having issues. Overall, I think that Bachmann's new Gunpowder van is a pretty good model. My only real complaint with it was that it felt a little lightweight, but obviously, as you've seen, it hasn't really caused very many issues other than maybe with the couplings. I'd say that this model is one that I would recommend to people, and honestly, I feel like with all of the rolling stock that Bachmann have made themselves for the narrow gauge line, they've done a very good job of, and all of it fits together very well. And so, yeah, that's my review on the Gunpowder van. I hope you all enjoyed it, and see you all later.